All right, welcome to the show. We are going to read our quick Apple podcast review of the week. So I appreciate the reviews. So this one comes from Paul32. So thank you, Paul32, whoever you are. It says, great podcast. You should listen. If you're a Christian dad or just want to learn how to be a better man and leader, check out this podcast. And he also says in episode 1, Dan talks to a Navy SEAL. So that one was a really cool episode with Chad Williams. So thank you, Paul P or Paul32. Appreciate this week's Apple podcast review. So now on to the show. All right. Today we have Adam McAbee on the show, the journey of a Christian dad. And man, this is a guy I've been excited to talk to for quite some time. We've been following him on social media. He's got a really exciting company that I can't wait for you guys to hear about. For those of you that are sports fans, you're even going to dig this even more. But just being entrepreneurial spirit minded is an interest. It's always fun talking to entrepreneurs that are doing things. And your background came from not being an entrepreneur, if I'm getting the story right. But let's just get into it. So, welcome to the show, Adam McAbee.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Dan.
Yeah, yeah. And am I getting that right? You weren't entrepreneurial, and this just came upon you. Like, tell us about that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always had some kind of a side gig.
Okay,
Call it entrepreneurial or not. My
mowing
wife,
lawns and
never really mowed lawns,
that
but
was my first thing when I was like
no,
9 or 10 years old. If I could push that mower, that's when I got started with the
man,
entrepreneurial thing.
I tell you, I think my work ethic probably started from there because my mom and dad, they made me and my brother mow the yard and all that kind of stuff. And I hated it, man. We're in Texas and it's just really, really hot outside. So mowing lawns and keeping up my lawn is not my forte. But, definitely got the work ethic from there. And, growing up in my mid 20s, I was a youth pastor for quite some time. And, I love ministry, but ministry is very hard to pay the bills. It's definitely a calling. And, I've always had some kind of a side gig to help pay the bills. And then, having 4 kids, it's not cheap raising kids. And so I think the more time goes by, the more expensive it gets to raise our kids. And so just having that extra side hustle has always been kind of my thing. I've driven for Uber, I've driven for Lyft, I've done DoorDash, I've done, all the different side jobs you can imagine. I've been in network marketing, been pretty successful in network marketing. My wife and I, as we were youth pastors, I had a t-shirt design and printing company and graphic design company that just started kind of like this company started. Went out to go find somebody that can print a t-shirt for my youth ministry the way that I wanted it. Late 2000s, the craze was those real weird designs off on the side of the shirt and, printed all different kinds of ways on the shirt. So I was designing my shirts, but nobody could print them the way that I wanted them. So found out the technology was digital printing, direct to garment. So I went out and got the equipment, got the gear, and just started making my own shirts. And other youth pastors were like, dude, that is slick. How'd you find
That is
that?
awesome.
And so I just started printing shirts for other youth ministers in the area, and then local schools and softball and baseball teams and football teams and cheer squads and other clubs within schools started figuring out what I was doing, and they hired me to do it. And it just turned into this, printing t-shirts on the side. So anyway, yeah, I've entrepreneurial or not, it's one thing or another, but I've always kind of had some kind of a side gig to help pay the bills. So, and then Stadium Drop just kind of came out of frustration at the very ballpark that's behind you.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it. So in the background for those listening on audio is Busch Stadium, the new one.
Yeah.
And the picture happens to be a game I was attending. It was a World Series game, and Chris Carpenter was pitching that day. And there was a huge sign. I think I've shared this story before, but there was a huge sign when I walked in, and we were way early because it was World Series. And the dang sign says, and you being from Texas, it was a Texas story. Dang sign says, Chuck Norris was a Texas Ranger. And I thought, man, you SOB Texas people, how in the heck did you get in our stadium so early and get this massive sign posted? I'm fired up about this game.
Yeah.
And then just beneath it, it says, but Jesus was a carpenter.
Ah, nice.
I was like, all right, let's go. Let's get this.
I just got over that World Series defeat like yesterday, and then you bring it back up, opening up those wounds. So, man. Anyway, yeah, I'm a huge Texas Rangers fan. We have not been very good since those two back-to-back World Series. I think, that Boston, they call it the curse of the Bambino. I'm going to call it the curse of the Cardinal. Uh, two times in a row, we're one out away from winning it all, and you dang freaking Cardinals, man.
One of my wife's really good friends, her brother is David Freese.
Oh, wow. Man, that guy. he's the definition of a Ranger killer, man.
Oh my goodness, that was crazy.
Yeah. Oh man.
On my side, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I tell you, the first time going to that ballpark, it was mixed emotions. They don't call it baseball heaven for a reason. I mean, they call it baseball heaven for a reason. And if you've never been to Busch Stadium, especially the new one with the way they've got the live places across the street with all
yes.
post
Ballpark
pregame
Village,
stuff. Yeah, Ballpark Village. Man, I tell you, they're trying to replicate that here in Texas with Texas Live and all the different things that they're doing next to our new ballpark. It's baseball heaven, and it's baseball heaven for a reason. And just the first time walking into that ballpark, it was like that aha moment, like, oh man, this is what baseball is supposed to be like. That's a gorgeous stadium. Beautiful,
thank you.
Beautiful
area.
Thank you. So yeah, I love it.
There was a vendor down from Northwestern College.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he did some Cubs games from time to time and some Bears games for the World Series. I'm like, what do you mean you're here from Chicago? He's like, well, they bring us in from all over for big games like this.
Yeah.
I said, okay. And so what do you like most about it? And he looks and he goes, those flags over there. I go, what? What are you talking about? Those flags? What are you talking about? The pennants.
Yeah.
All the different World Series and National League championships and stuff like that. And he goes, I'm a Cubs fan. We don't have those.
Funny story growing up, being a big baseball fan in Texas, before, live streaming and all that stuff became a thing in the 80s, we had two TV channels outside of our local network to watch baseball. It was WGN, which was the Cubs. And it was TBS for the Braves. And I couldn't stand the Braves, man. I don't know what it was, but all those pitchers and I didn't like them. My brother, I grew up, my brother's 5 years older than me. I kind of idolized my brother growing up. And we're still really close to this day, but he was a huge Cubs fan. And so for his senior year, for a trip, my mom and dad took us to Chicago, and they did a lot of things to help create moments and memories for us, which we can get into later because that's kind of the heartbeat of Stadium Drop. But they did a great job of creating moments and memories for my brother. And I'll never forget being in Chicago for the very first time. And just meeting Andre Dawson, Mark Grace, Ryan Sandberg, Sean Dunston, man, the classics of Chicago. And it was surreal, and I'll never forget those moments, man. And so I grew up a huge Cubs fan, huge Cubs, huge Rangers. And to this day, I still root for the Cubs and the Rangers. So can't stand the Braves.
Can't stand the Braves.
So, as a fan, I don't know what it is. All those players are gone, but just growing up, you find those teams that you love and hate. And, the Yankees, being a Rangers fan, I love the old Yankees, but there's just something about the new Yankees that I can't get behind them, man. I don't know what it is, but, the Yankees and the Cardinals, I think it's just because they win every stinking year. It's like, if it's not the Yankees or the Cardinals, you may have a one-off. Like, I was thrilled to see the Dodgers finally win one. I mean, that was awesome. And they did it in Texas, which was even better. But I guarantee you this next year, it's probably going to be the Cardinals and the Yankees again in the World Series. It's like every 4 or 5 years that cycle repeats.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. You can't you can't knock them. They're champions for a reason, and they do things the right way. So
Well, guys connect on sports, so
yeah,
I never mind throwing some sports things into the journey of a Christian dad. And while
yeah,
we're rolling on sports, let's just roll right into stadium drops. So, like,
yeah,
how'd this get going, and tell us that story.
yeah, man. So we've got 4 kids. My wife and I are blue collar workers. We do everything that we can to provide for our kids. And my oldest son, he was 9 at the time, got an invite to the Pro Football Hall of Fame Quarterback Academy. And so we went up there, as a dad. My first love is baseball. My second love is the Aggies and football, as you can see by my wall behind me.
Yeah.
I absolutely love football. And so as a dad, that's a big bucket list item. So we decided to turn it into a family vacation, especially when we realized that we could go see a Cleveland Indians baseball game, and we can go see a St. Louis Cardinals baseball game. And we packed up the car, we took the family. My boys went with us, and man, it was just a trip of a lifetime. We went to Cleveland Indians game the first night. Got up, I got that all too familiar tug, from your kid wanting to go get concessions. They were hungry. And so as the dad that wants to provide those moments and memories, I got up, and while I was up, I missed a 3-run home run. And I'll never forget coming back to my seat going, what happened? What'd I miss? And then the very next night we're in St. Louis, and I get up, it's a pitcher's duel. And that's one of the reasons why I love National League Baseball, because the pitchers bat. So it's a lot more of a pitcher's duel than an offensive explosion. And that night in particular, it was 0-0 going into the bottom of the 5th inning. And I get that all too familiar tug again.
Yeah.
And hey, and let me backtrack a little bit. St. Louis has the best concession food on the planet. Their concession food is amazing. So
They
we're
took it
walking
to
around.
another level a few years back.
Oh my gosh. And it is great. I remember before the game, we're walking around and just smelling all the different smells and food from all the different local people that have concession booths there. Golly, it was so good. And there was this one barbecue place behind home plate that I remember smelling, and we were sitting in the outfield, right kind of behind your head there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I am not getting up and walking all the way to home plate just to get that barbecue. So I settled for what was close by. And while I'm waiting in line, again, it's the bottom of the 5th inning. There's a runner on first, a runner on third, and St. Louis executes a double steal where the runner on third steals home, and it freaks out. They laid down a squeeze bunt, and it works to perfection. The catcher freaks out, overthrows second base trying to get the out, and it was an error. And the dude from first scores all the way from first.
Oh my goodness.
And it was the only 2 runs of the game. And I'm sitting there in line watching it on a busted 32-inch screen TV. I mean, the picture's all jumping and his colors going out, and the crowd in the background's going wild, man. And I get back to my seat. My wife is like, you missed an incredible play. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Tell me about it. I've watched it on the busted screen. She's like, with technology the way that it is today, why can't we just download an app, order the food, and have it delivered to our seat? And I remember looking at her that day, and I said, Kristen, that is absolutely brilliant. So when God drops an idea on the hearts of his people, he expects us to steward that idea. And so I went home with her, and we just started looking up different, in-seat delivery, mobile ordering, all that kind of stuff for venues. And, at first we didn't really find anything. So we started sharing our vision a couple months later with some of our friends. I'm a big reader. There's a book called The Power of Who by a friend of ours named Bob Bodine. If you've never read that book, I highly recommend it because it's a book about the power of relationships. And as a Christian dad, there's nothing more powerful than utilizing the people that God puts in your path. There's nothing that happens. Like, you meet people, it's not by accident. Those are ordained appointments every single day that God has put strategic people in your path to help you fulfill a vision, to help you fulfill a need, to encourage you, to challenge you, to motivate you. God puts people in our lives for a reason. So we started reaching out to the power of who, the people that we knew in our life, and just sharing our vision of what we wanted to do. And slowly but surely, it just became light bulb moment after light bulb moment for our friends. The first gentleman I shared the idea with was a guy named Chad Haley. He's our executive VP. And he was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So he put me in touch with a gentleman that's now our chief marketing officer, Joshua Curtis. Never knew him before all this happened. And so Chad introduced me to him. Joshua immediately feels the Holy Spirit just tell him, hey, this is the right deal. This is where you need to put your focus and effort. And so Joshua was like, I'm in. And so he started doing all the branding. So all of our website, all of our marketing, all of our branding, everything that you see from a graphic and logo standpoint, Joshua.
Wow.
He's amazing at what he does.
Those guys aren't easy to find.
No,
by the way.
No, they're not. And Joshua, we don't have enough time in this podcast to go through the list of people that he's worked for and done stuff with. But Joshua,
not that those guys can't be good at what they do, but can they be good at what they do and also match up with what you're thinking and, that type thing. So that's the issue.
Absolutely. And for me, culture is everything.
Yes.
And so to find these people who believe the way that you believe, who have the same heart and the same path that you have and can operate with excellence. Listen, I love Christians. I'm obviously one, but I think in the Christian industry, the one thing that's lacking is a spirit of excellence. And there's so many companies out there that are Christian companies that, no offense, but they don't operate in a spirit of excellence. And so to find people like Joshua, like Chad, like our executive VP of operations, I mean, we have a whole entire team of Christian men and women. We do this with our wives, to find people that have that same belief and same desire and passion to do things with excellence. It's very rare. And we have gotten a team together that, man, they love Jesus, they love their wives, and we love excellence. And character, work ethic are going to get you there at the top, but it's the character and it's the passion for things done with excellence that keep you at the top. And that's the heartbeat of who we are as people, who we are as husbands and wives. And that's what drives Stadium Drop, is a passion for excellence and a passion to see the kingdom of God advance through business in the marketplace.
Wow, that is awesome. I love the idea. And I hadn't heard you share. I followed you on social media for a while, but I hadn't heard you quite share it just like that. Like, I love having that spirit-driven purpose behind you and knowing that God's with you and just having that belief. Because that, in my business, that was exactly, how it happened for me too, where I just felt that overwhelming feeling of the Holy Spirit a number of different times as I was taking some steps.
Yeah.
And man, it's made such a difference.
Yeah, it's huge. The plans of man are many, but it's the path of the Lord that proceeds. And we just try to, obviously we have our plans, we have our ideas, but we really try to submit to what God and the Holy Spirit's directing and go day to day,
Those scary moments. You ever have one of those scary moments where you're like, all right, God, wheel's yours. I don't know where we're going, but
that's been Stadium Drop ever since we launched. Listen, who's going to launch a in-seat delivery mobile ordering concession company in the midst of a pandemic where every stadium, every venue shuts down
with empty stadiums? Yeah.
And hey, if you look back through history, some of the biggest businesses that have ever launched in the middle of a crisis, whether it's, in 2008 when the financial crisis hit, whether it's in 2000 when the dot-com boom happened, or, World War I, World War II, the Great Depression. Some of the greatest businesses rose out of the ashes. And that's where we feel like Stadium Drop's at. We formed our company as an LLC in January 27th of 2020. And we started slowly plowing, putting our hands to the plow and working. We had some things moving. And then I'll never forget, I was sitting in a Dallas Mavericks basketball game with my executive VP of acquisitions, Rick Thompson. And the two of us were literally sitting kind of courtside, and we were looking up, looking around, just dreaming like, thinking to ourselves, one day we will be in this arena and we will be operating with all of these people and runners all over the place, delivering stadium drop food. And just never forget that moment where the loudspeaker guy came on, the PA guy came on and was like, I don't remember the guy who tested positive for COVID the first
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Rudy something or other. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And it was the weirdest feeling ever. Me and Rick looked at each other, looked at the people next to us, like, you got the Rona? I don't know if I got the Rona. And we started, everybody's kind of like freaking out a little bit. But then the game goes on and there's no care in the world. And, that was the last regular season NBA game played, was the Mavericks game that night.
Wow.
And it was just surreal. And then, things shut down. A couple weeks later, everything shut down. All the things that we had working with Stadium Drop shut down. And we're sitting here trying to get funding. We're trying to get, more contracts, and just the uncertainty of sports and in-seat delivery was, man, it was crazy. And then we just kept our eyes to the goal and our hearts to the spirit, and just kept plowing. Our executive team, we meet every week. We kept meeting, we kept talking, we kept dreaming. And then finally we signed our first contract with Oklahoma State University, 1st of August of last year. And shortly after that was Arkansas State University. And we opened up. First game that we ever operated was Oklahoma State versus Tulsa, September 19th, 2020.
That's cool.
Yeah. And they had 25% capacity. Arkansas State had 25% capacity. And we just kind of navigated the waters. And, there was some, games got moved around. Obviously, it affected both Oklahoma State and Arkansas State, but everybody stayed faithful, stayed plugged in to making sure that the games got in. And within 3 months of operating, we had over 1,700 app downloads. We had over 1,200 orders placed with just 2 universities and 1 sport. And we had 9 games between the 2 universities that we operated with those numbers. So, I mean, it's just a God thing, man. And we're just blessed and excited that he trusted us to steward that idea. So
that is awesome. There's a guy in Oklahoma State, Matt Holliday. We had a chance to talk to him a while back. He used to play for the Cardinals. And
yeah.
So there's a significant faith base inside of the Oklahoma State baseball team right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, we were part of opening day at O'Brate Stadium, which is the new baseball stadium for the team. It was incredible. And that baseball team, man, they're good. They're fun to watch. Oh yeah. Their starting pitcher, man, he's like 6'7", and he can sling that baseball, man. God, it's so awesome to watch him pitch. He's going to be a stud in the majors one day.
That's awesome. Remember his name by chance?
I don't, man. I don't. His number's 27, and he's 6. He's like the tallest kid on the Oklahoma State baseball team. He's like 6'7". But he's a stud, and he's gonna be a force to be reckoned with for some time.
Nice. You mentioned The Power of Who by Bob Bodie and
Bodine.
Bodine. Bob Bodine. There we go. And I was thinking of another book called The Power of Moments that I thought you might reference, and that one's by Chip and Dan Heath. And in that book, it talks about peak moments. You remember the highlights, like. Obviously you remember that stadium visit where you missed, the big moment.
Yeah.
They remember it on their side. You remember it on your side.
Yeah.
But the mundaneness, the average things that happen in a trip or at work or, whatever it is, you forget a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But when the big moment happens, I remember we were at the stadium and like an alarm went off. It was Albert Pujols' second game back to the stadium. And since he'd been gone, and this alarm goes off and everybody's looking around like it was a terrorist attack or something, like something freaky happened. All the players just walked off the field. Wow. And the guys that I was with were like, something monumental's happened. Turned out it happened to be just a false alarm. But none of us had seen it. And the whole game just had that weird feeling and all that. But like, we're going to remember that for the rest of our lives, that eerie feeling we had. There was kind of a 9/11 type feeling. Like, we thought, anyway, that's a different thing. But that that power of moments. So, and that's what Stadium Drop can do, is help not miss that peak moment. And
Yeah,
not only that, but you also get to stay connected with your people.
absolutely. You know, there's very few things in life that can bring people together like a sporting event. Um, I'm a firm believer in that. You know, my mom and
But at
dad.
the same time, you're there with your kids,
Yeah,
and your kids
absolutely,
obviously want some stuff. And
absolutely,
who goes to get the
absolutely.
stuff? Mom or dad? Either one, but
Dad.
somebody
Most of the
leaves
time
and
it's
they probably
dad.
leave by themselves.
Yeah, yeah, they do. And listen, I'm not naive to think that the concessions is part of game day. I mean, who doesn't love a great hot dog, or the pretzels and the different, like in the case for St. Louis, like the barbecue and all the different mom and pop third party people that are in the ballpark. Like that's part of the game day experience. But at the end of the day, you go to create. I mean, life is about moments and memories, right? And you experience those moments and memories watching the game and not waiting in line, getting frustrated because you're missing it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the worst feeling in the world. But yet, people get hungry, and that is part of the game day experience. And so we really do want to maximize moments and memories, so that people can have those for the rest of their life. I mean, I'll never forget the things that my mom and dad did for my brother and I, going and experiencing moments for baseball, whether it was baseball or football. And there was one time where, being a big Aggie, my dad for Christmas one year got me tickets to the Cotton Bowl. And even though
Wow.
the Aggies got their butts kicked by Notre Dame, I'll never forget it. It was extremely cold. I was layered up beyond imagination, and the Aggies lost 28-3. I'll never forget those moments in that game. 1992 or 93, whenever it was 93, when the Rangers were ending their run at the old ballpark. They were finishing that series with the Oakland Athletics. My mom and dad took me and my brother to that series. We watched the last game in that ballpark. We saw the home plate get pulled up and taken over to the new ballpark and put down on the big screen. I mean, those kinds of things, man. And people don't put a lot of thought and effort into how to create moments and memories. And man, there's an author I love by the name of John Maxwell.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes. I
And
got his book right here. His new one. Change Your World right there.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's a great
Yeah. He
book.
just came to St. Louis and we got to hang out and talk to him. And I got to
Oh, that's awesome.
do a little Q&A with him. And yeah, John is just
That's
amazing.
awesome.
And yeah.
I've got so I'm sitting in front of my library, and he's right up there. But he talks about intentional living is a book that I
Yes.
love. And in intentional living, he talks about being intentional with whether you're a dad, whether you're a mom, whether you're a business owner, whatever. You have to be intentional with everything you do. When you wake up in the morning, if you're not intentional to create moments for the people that work for you and with you, or if you're not intentional with creating those moments with your kids and with your wife, then what's the purpose of living? And so, you got to be intentional. And that's where, the whole purpose of Stadium Drop is to allow parents, and, even if you're not going to the game with your kids, you're going with your best friend, or, your best girlfriend or whatever, man, plan ahead and be intentional to create moments and memories with each other. Life is fleeting, life is short, and there's no better way, in my opinion, to create moments and memories than going to a good baseball game or a good football game, or, I love hockey, going to a good hockey game, and just enjoy the moment.
Yeah. So a couple things there. So earlier you mentioned faith and excellence.
Yeah.
And I've got a friend of mine. He just came out with a book called Sacred Drive. His name is Vaughn Kohler.
Sacred Drive.
Sacred Drive. Yep. Sacred Drive. Biblical principles for pursuing your God-given potential. So Vaughn Kohler's his name. And Vaughn's like, that's what's missing, because we got faith, a whole faith culture, and we've got a whole excellence culture. So we can do all things with our power without anybody else, because we're awesome. Is we got to combine the two of them. We got to have that culture of excellence inside of faith, kind of, I can do all things with Christ who strengthens me, and,
Yeah.
you know, put it together versus keeping it separate. And I heard you mention earlier, I'm like, it's fantastic because we can do big, big things. We can still be humble. We can still achieve. Uh, I love it. Albert Pujols, since we're talking sports, he hits his home run and then he
Yeah.
puts two fingers up every time.
Every time. Yeah.
He honors God all the time. And anyway, I just get
Yeah.
fired up about the topic. And we, as men, we don't have to be sissies if we're
Yeah.
Christians.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't have
Oh,
to be
absolutely.
weak. Jesus wasn't weak. My buddy
No,
Vaughn's like, everybody thinks he's Mr. Rogers, and he's just not.
no. Jesus led, I like to put it, quiet strength. I mean, he did not back down at all. He was blunt when he needed to be, and he was gentle and smooth when he needed to be. He was the perfect example of humility and quiet strength. Um, and the way I look at it, in Genesis, the Bible tells us that we're created in God's image. So if you look around and see what God created in 6 days, I mean, I'm looking outside my window right now, and it's a beautiful, clear day here in Texas, and not a cloud in the sky. And thinking about how fast the world is spinning right now, and the fact that we don't feel how fast we're spinning. If we're created in the image of the one who did all of that, why in the world would anyone settle for mediocrity? It makes no sense to me. And that I'm going to have to get that book, Sacred Drive, because that's what drives me. That's what fuels me. And there's so many Christians that are walking around with weak mindsets and weak mentalities. And, they're living in fear for whatever reason. And they don't understand the gravity of who created them, why they're created, and they're walking around with no purpose. John Maxwell, they're walking around with no intentionality, and that's not how God has called us to live. We're created in his image, and he worked for 6 days creating beautiful creation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're created in that image. Why do people settle for mediocrity? I was reading something one time where trees grow to their highest potential. I mean, there's nothing that stops a tree. There's nothing that stops the mountains. There's nothing that stops the ocean for doing what it was created to do. But yet humans are the only ones who fail to reach their full potential. Why? It's the greatest lie that Satan has ever put upon us, is you can't do this or you can't do that, because he knows the full potential that is within us. And when we can walk with the purpose that God has put in you and understand that our potential is unlimited, because the one who created us is unlimited. Listen, he said, let there be light. Guess what scientists are still finding today? They're still finding light casting out darkness millions of light years away. So when God said, let there be light, boom, it happened, right? Light is still casting out darkness. And if the one who created that is still casting out darkness and creating space, why are we not continuing to create? We are creators. Creation creates excellence, not mediocrity.
Yes, yes. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it, man. We got to connect you with Fawn and keep this conversation rolling. Keep this
Yeah, man.
conversation
Listen,
rolling.
I could get on my soapbox all day long. And, a lot of times I rub people the wrong way. But when they get to know me and they know my heart, and you read the Bible, I mean, you can't help but just understand, as men and as women of God, we have so much strength that a lot of people are just not walking in. And it's sad, really. And I refuse to be that rat in the box that other rats are pulling them down when they're trying to get,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah. I continually, separate the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to drag? I got to go over here. You can watch for a while, and once you're ready to start running again, let's go.
Yeah.
Um, so the other thought I had, you mentioned like creating these moments and doing things special, and then intentional living also. uh, it can be a lot easier as a dad to just be tired on some days and not do things intentionally, not do things with our kids. Hey dad, I want to whatever. One of the days that stands out in my life, it was before Christmas, and my oldest daughter says, Dad, I want to get a climbing wall for the house.
Nice.
In addition to the Ninja Warrior course thing we got in the basement, in addition to this big, massive swing we've got in our basement, in addition to a balance beam and stuff, I want
Yep.
a climbing wall, Dad. That's what you need to tell Santa to bring for Christmas. And it was one of those Saturdays where it was kind of blah and everybody's kind of whatever. And I said, I did a couple quick looks and I figured out there was this big climbing gym not too far from our house. I'm like, I got one better for you. How about instead of this little 6-foot wall, we go climb a 25-foot wall right now?
Wow.
I'm
Do it.
like, we could have just been lazy the whole afternoon and evening and wasted it. And
Yeah.
instead we went and we did that. And it was one of the most fun days we've had. And now we've turned into a climbing routine. And, my kids are 7 and 8 and they're climbing 25-foot walls without harnesses or anything like that. There's a safety mat beneath us and blah, blah, blah. But like we get after it. We have so much fun. But it was just that one decision to do something special instead of allow sloth and laziness
Yeah.
to take over that night.
Yeah.
And it's really propelled us. Anyway, it was just a side note story, but intentional living, faith and excellence,
Yeah.
dad, coach, husband, any of those things. Where do you got a story or something that you've applied in your life, your family's life as a leader of your family that might share some intentionality?
Man, that's a great question. Um, I would have to say going back 7, 8 years, you know, I said we were a youth pastor for quite a while, but coming out of youth ministry, we really struggled financially. We were living in a house when we moved back to Texas that every time it rained, it flooded. Um, there was, not a whole lot to do. There wasn't a whole lot of money. But one of the things that we used to do was take Sunday afternoon walks. And there was a place down the street. It's probably 2 or 3 miles down the street called Bethany Lakes. And we had a golden lab, and the boys were, 3 and 4 years old. My daughters were 9 to 10, 12 years old. I don't remember the exact ages, but we would be intentional about going out and just going for a walk, letting the boys ride their bikes, going down to this place called Bethany Lakes over in Allen, and just having fun, um, skipping rocks in the little pond out there, letting the boys climb trees, you know, doing those kinds of things. We've got a lot of pictures that we look back on now, and we talk all the time about, man, we miss living over there. We miss this, we miss that, we miss, those Sunday afternoon walks. So hopefully that answers the question, but, just doing those kinds of things. I mean, it doesn't always have to be sports, but just enjoying those moments. And, where we live now, there's walking trails. And to this day, we don't get out as much as we want, just because of the busyness of startups and, running a business the way that we do and still having a full-time, day job.
Yeah.
But we certainly make the moments as much as we can, getting out and walking in trails around here. And the boys get out on their bikes a lot and go out and ride and have fun. So, just being intentional with those kinds of things, I think, is just as important as being intentional going to a baseball game or a football game or whatever sporting event you like. So,
Yeah, in those smaller type things that you can do literally every day that are free. Like nature's a big thing for me. Like
yeah,
that makes the world a difference.
yeah.
Being active. Is there a moment you can think of with one or multiple kids you have, or your wife even, where it was just an everyday normal activity and there was something that stood out, maybe maybe a lesson, or maybe just a time where you bonded and completely something unexpected?
Yeah, there's a lot of those things that happen, man. I do coach my boys in their youth sports, whether it's football or baseball. I've got our baseball hat on right now. Um, but there's always different things where, something pops up, and, I'll pull my boys off to the side and be like, hey, this is why I teach you guys to do it this particular way, because there's a lot of correlation to life and sports. And yeah, we're relating whatever this is to sports, but as you get older and as you grow, this is how it can relate to your life. One is, work ethic. One could be you just respect. When a coach is talking to a kid, a lot of times their attention span is very small. But as a dad, my job is to raise God-loving, God-fearing, productive adults, right? And so a lot of times I'll tell my kids, and a lot of people think I'm hard on them, but it's just life lessons of telling them, hey, pay attention. When a coach is talking to you, look them in the eye. Don't play with the baseball. Don't throw the football around. Stop what you're doing, look at the coach in the eye, and learn what they're trying to teach you. Because not only are they trying to teach you what to do in this particular sport, but as you get older, it's about learning what to do in life and those kinds of things. And then, when it comes to my wife, people make fun of us all the time because, the everyday, Walmart runs or going to Kroger or whatever, like we turn those little things into dates,
Yeah. Yeah.
You always got to date your spouse, right? And when life is busy and you're running a company and you're raising 4 kids, my oldest is about to turn 20. My youngest just turned 11. So life is full and you've got to find a way to, again, be intentional that when you have that one-on-one time with your wife, when life is this busy, you got to find a way to turn it into a date and,
Yes.
and make it fun. And we do that a lot with Walmart dates, and we'll do like an impromptu. There's a little burger joint over by our local Walmart that we like to go to. And we'll just turn it into an impromptu, date night while the kids are at home eating their own dinner. But you got to do what you got to do to continue, dating your spouse. We've been married for be 21 years this August. And, we've definitely had a lot of downs. And we've learned, the importance of continuing to date our spouse because we're young. I just turned 41. My wife's about to be 39. And, our youngest just turned 11. So by the time he's, graduated high school and in college, we'll be empty nesters while we're both still in our 40s. And that excites me for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But if you don't learn to fall in love with your spouse in the middle of the busyness of raising kids, when they're grown and out, it's almost like you're living with a stranger, and we do not want that. And my encouragement to any Christian dad out there is find ways to date your wife. Don't lose that spark, because one day the kids will be grown and they'll be out of the house, and it's going to be left up to you and your wife. And what are you doing? Do you know the person that's living in your house? And, when we were in student ministry, I can honestly say I did not know the spouse that I was living with. My work ethic, I think my strongest part of my being is my work ethic. I learned it from my dad. My brother's the same way. We have a very, very strong work ethic, but it can also be my biggest weakness. And that was the case in when I was in ministry. And I woke up one morning and just looked at my wife, and she looked at me, and things weren't good. And so we vowed, to never let that happen again. And since 2013, when God got a hold of us in a major way, we've been on fire for each other. And in the busyness of everything that's going on, we always find the little ways to, talk weird to each other. Like I call her sexy all the time, those kind of silly things, but she calls me handsome and all that little, stupid stuff. But it's not stupid in the long run. It's cute and it's fun and makes you feel like you're back in high school again,
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. I love that. I love that. Somebody was talking about date nights. You got a date night,
Oh,
date
yeah.
night. And I'm like, nah, just date period. Like
Yeah, every day.
daytime, whatever. We've
Yeah.
been table shopping lately and, skipping out on work and going to lunch and go, we just have fun with it. And
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was really cool. Had a thing happen the other day. I'll brag on my wife for a second. She she was running out with the kids, and I came home, and it was a night where where she was going to go to Bible study. She's found this new group of ladies to do Bible study with. They had set it up, and she gets home, and I can just tell that she's tired, maybe run down a little bit, and she starts planting the seeds of how she's not going to go to Bible study, but hadn't said she wasn't going. And a little bit later, I'm like, "Hey, girls, mom's going to be going to Bible study tonight." And the girls respond, "No, she's not." I said, "How do you know that?" One, their motivation is to keep mom home anyway, because they don't like when
Yeah.
mom leaves.
Yeah.
And she says, "Well, mom told us." I said, "Nah." I said, "What do you think? Should mom go or not go? I know she's tired and she's got some different things. And there certainly is the easy thing to do. And then there's the hard thing to do. And we know when we do hard things,
Yep.
we always look back and we go, man, I'm glad I did that. I'm
Yep.
glad I did that." And I said to my oldest daughter, who's into doing hard things, I said, "What do you think mom should do, the easy thing or the hard thing?" She goes, "Dad, this time she should do the easy thing."
That's funny.
So text my wife's friend. I'm like, "Hey, you should encourage her to go to Bible study."
Yeah.
And next thing you know, my wife's phone buzzes. She doesn't see it, but on her own thinking, she decided she was going to go. And I heard her go upstairs. The water's running a little bit, does her makeup, and she comes downstairs. She's like, "All right, girls, I'm getting ready to go to Bible study." And she had that look of refreshment on her face too, where she wasn't run down anymore. And she was excited to see her friends. Anyway, it was really, really cool to see her. And then she came home and we talked, and I said, "Hey, by the way, I love that you did that. I love that you did the hard thing. And I love the example that you showed our daughters.
Yeah.
And I hope you got the reward from going and being with your friends. I hope you got the Bible study. I hope you got to connect with God. And I want you to know I appreciate it. And I love the fact that our daughters got to see that."
Yeah.
And she just looked at me, she goes, "Wow, thank you so much." So encouraging our spouse and helping our spouse grow
Yeah.
and develop strong and deep roots and rich soil is so, so important. So
Yeah.
I love that you brought that into this
Yeah.
conversation.
I had a friend one time that said, our wives are a lot like a flower. When you speak life into them, you speak sweet to them. Uh, they're like that flower that just opens up so beautifully, and they shine the way that God intended for them to shine. But when you're harsh and you're blunt and you're negative and all the different things that happen, they're like that flower that just shrinks and withers away. And um, whenever he said that to me, I'll never forget. Um, and so I've always looked at my wife as that sweet flower and your kids are the same way, whether they're boys or they're girls. And it's just for me, it's a sweet reminder, as a dad of two daughters and two sons, always just finding the good and speaking the good.
I've got to hang around a bunch of professional football players, and oftentimes I'll ask them who their favorite coach was, or a memory or something that's pivotal for them.
Yeah.
And they answer it in that way. Like when I get that encouragement, or the coach believes in me and he
Yeah.
transfers that to me. I was talking with the guy, Vernon Fox, a while back. He used to play for the Broncos and Chargers and Redskins and Lions. And while he was with the Chargers, he thought he might get cut from the team.
Oh,
And
wow.
Schottenheimer came up and he says, "Hey, you're up. I believe in you. It was incredible. We were able to get you the way that we got you for the price that we got you for. I can't believe it. And you're up. And I believe in you. You're going to do big things." And he said, "I went from feeling shrunk and weak to being all powerful. And I was ready to, you
Yeah.
know, knock down a brick wall." Is like, I would do anything for Coach Marty, rest his soul.
Yeah.
And I've heard those stories time and time again from other professional athletes,
Yeah.
that one guy that just said the right thing at the right time to encourage them. And when we do that for our wives too, the same thing, like you said, bloom like a flower.
Yeah. That's right. Absolutely.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Stadium Drop is about to go big time. I believe that with all my heart.
Yeah.
God's behind you. Let's say that it goes to a crazy level of success. Have you considered how that might affect you or things to safeguard yourself from the effects of mega success?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I've got a lot of men in my life that have permission to speak into my life at any moment. And so it's the inner circle principle, you know. Um, that's the reason why we have the executive team the way that I've got it. a lot,
Yeah.
a lot of people, you know, they look down when you got a startup that has as many executive members that we have, but I don't look down on it, man. I look at it as a strength because of that very reason. There's a lot of accountability. There's a lot of eyeballs internally, and this, you know, the people that are on our executive team, they're definitely my inner circle. But you know, there's several pastor friends of mine that you know, we went to church with them for 7 or 8 years, and then God called us to come to a local church here. But that church that we just left about a year and a half ago, those pastors, man, they know who they are if they're listening to this podcast. But you know, we still talk pretty frequently, and they understand that if they see me do anything out of line, or if they see, you know, pride starting to creep in, or whatever, you know, as a man, we often, you know, those blind spots in a car, men have those blind spots as well. And man, I've learned through the years, it's extremely important to have that tight inner circle that can chastise you when you need to. You know what I mean? And I firmly believe I'm not above reproach at all. And man, those men, they know how to keep me humble. And there's some really good friends that can do the same thing. They're not a part of our executive team, but man, I think of guys like Brandon Grumbles. I think of guys like Cody Mahon. Man, they can call me at any moment, and they can ask, "Hey, man, how's your heart? And how's your soul?" And we have pretty good conversations. My former pastor, Danny McDaniel, is one of those guys that can call me at any moment and just say, "Hey, love you. Where you at?" You know.
Nice.
And so it's nice to have those relationships to keep you grounded.
Yeah, yeah, something just as simple as that.
Yeah.
Shooting somebody a note and,
Yep.
nowadays it seems like a lot of communication is typed versus talked.
Yeah. Well, and to think about it, man, you know, when God puts somebody on your heart, He's putting them on your heart for a reason. Shoot them a text message. It takes nothing but to
Yeah.
send them a quick text message. And man, as soon as God puts somebody on my heart, I don't care what I'm doing. I try to stop what I'm doing and just shoot them a quick text message. Just say, "Hey, man, how you doing?" Or, "Hey, thinking about you." It doesn't take but 5 seconds. And oftentimes it's that one little text that can brighten somebody's day. And, you know, as going back to your question, is that inner circle, you know, as stadium drop grows, because it will, there's no doubt in my mind. Um, it's that inner circle that's going to keep our team humble and grounded and solid.
There's a voicemail technology out there like click to talk type thing. And I
Yeah.
sent one of my friends a message for a specific reason. And I thought about it. And after I sent it, there was this other guy that came to mind. I thought, I don't know why, but he needs to hear this exact message that isn't directed to him. And the things I said in it are not at all about him.
Yeah.
But he just needs it. So I just forwarded it to him and I said, "Hey, by the way, this is a message I sent somebody else that you know, but for some reason I think you need to hear it."
Yeah.
When he listened to it, he sent me a note back and he was absolutely broken in the area that I was speaking about. And I had no idea. And he was somebody that was closer to me, and it opened up an entirely different conversation. And
Yeah.
now, I can connect with him on an area that I've got, quite a bit of experience and strength. And he needs somebody to lean on right now in this moment. And he's a guy
Yeah.
that I talk to every few days, and he hadn't opened up about that yet. So yes, what you're saying, when you
Yeah.
think about somebody, just reach out right then. There's a reason why they're coming up, out of the blue.
Yeah. You know, I think text messages have done a lot of bad for our society because it is too easy to just send a
Yes.
text instead of picking up the phone and letting somebody hear your voice. But in the opposite, I think it's done us a lot of good, because if you utilize it the right way, and send those quick text messages, it can mean a matter of life and death between some people. You just never know what they're going through, what they're dealing with, and reading something as quick as, "Hey man, thinking about you," or, "Hey man, love you." Uh,
Yeah.
there's not enough men that are strong in their manhood that can pick up the phone and shoot a text message and say, "Hey, love you." They think it's weird. Like, no, it's not weird. Christ was love. Christ loved
Yes.
his disciples, and he walked with them. He talked with them. He lived with them every day for 3 years. And yet we're above telling another man, "I love you." Come on, man. No, men need to hear the words, "I love you."
Yes.
So,
Yes, absolutely. For sure. So to wrap this up, if you got anything else that you want to share with the guys, and then in addition to that, we always kind of finish out with a weekly challenge.
yeah.
So I'm not throwing the challenge at you, but you might have something in your head to challenge the guys with, something to do this week, whatever that might be.
Yeah. Hey, let's challenge the men that are listening to this podcast with that very thing. For the next 7 days, when somebody pops up in your mind, don't hesitate. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, stop and send that person a text message telling them that you're thinking about them, tell them that you love them, tell them, "Hey, we need to catch up. Hey, when you got 5 minutes, give me a call." Whatever it may be, for the next 7 days, when somebody pops in your mind, send them a text message. Simple.
Simple, super simple.
Simple. Yep.
That's awesome. So speaking of people that pop in your mind and different things, if you guys have any connections with people at stadiums across the United States,
Yes.
Adam's easily accessible on Facebook for sure.
Yep.
Uh, well, they'll get the spelling, but feel free and put
Yeah.
any contacts out there that you want, and feel free to spell your name or what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm more active on Twitter and Instagram, uh,
Okay.
but I am on Facebook. You can find me at AL McAbee, ALMCABEE, across my
Okay.
social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. It's ALMCABEE,
Okay.
and then
Fantastic. So
anybody
hopefully,
can shoot me an email, and my email address is adam@stadiumdrop.com.
oh, excellent.
Yep.
Well, yeah,
I'd love to.
connect with Adam, guys, and if you've got a way to connect him with people around stadiums across the country, I'll be able to get my favorite hot dog from Busch Stadium and not have to walk 3/4 of
Yeah,
the way around the stadium to get it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
The
I
bacon
listen,
dog. When you come to St. Louis, you got to get the
the
bacon
bacon
dog.
dog. Yeah. Hey, listen, there's no place I want to be than Busch Stadium right now. So if anybody's got connections, listen, I would love to be in Busch Stadium, as well as all of Major League Baseball. Like I said, my first love is baseball. There's nothing that makes my heart happier than being at a ballpark. Just something nostalgic about it,
Well, if you're coming through St. Louis, let me know and we'll get you
I
set
will,
up.
for sure.
Well,
Absolutely.
sounds great. I appreciate you being on so much.
Yeah,
Enjoyed
man.
our conversation. Look forward to continuing this again. And uh, I can't wait to hear what you think about Vaughn's book too. It's really good.
Absolutely. I'm going to get it as soon as we get off here. So I appreciate it. And Dan, thanks for having me on. It's been a blast.
You bet. I appreciate it. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah. Thank you.